Welcome back. This is the Schultz Strong channel.
Schultz is strong all day long.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, share with your friends, enjoy it, mash that button,
rub it,
do whatever you need to get that.
Play with it.
Maybe
A little
bit. Always gotta play. Play is a good time.
bit.
Your definition of play is up to you. But anyways, we have some good topic today. What I'm talking about. What is the topic today?
Unilateral versus bilateral training.
Cool. We got the who, the what, the when, the where, and the why. So we're going to go through those. I'll ask a couple questions here and there. And if you have any questions, leave them below, and we will do our best to answer them as soon as possible. When we do come out with this channel, we'll be responding as quickly as we can because we got 2 people working on it, maybe 3. We'll see. But yeah, so we're going to start with the who at the moment. Are you ready for some who questions?
I'm ready for some who questions.
Okay, so what is the who for unilateral and bilateral training?
Okay, so the who is everyone. Everyone who works out or is wanting to work out or has even worked out and is like somewhere in the middle should know what unilateral versus bilateral training is and when to employ each. So the idea between unilateral just means one side. Bilateral means 2 sides. When we're talking about that in strength training, an example of a bilateral exercise is a standard stance, so that foot parallel stance, barbell deadlift. The upper body and the lower body are moving in the same plane, and the left and right sides of the body are trying to work together. The problem with that is that we all have asymmetries within the body, meaning one leg may be a little bit longer than the other. We might have a little more rotation to our back. Our muscles may be a little bit different developed. And then coordination is huge, meaning we're going to innervate more strongly through our more coordinated side of the body. Therefore, that part of the body, depending on your handedness, is going to lead a bilateral exercise. So there's ways with running software to bring balance to that. And I'll give you an example to go back to the barbell deadlift, square stance barbell deadlift. And that is, you can think to innervate more strongly through the left side if you're a right-handed person prior to the lift, so that there's a closer to a 50-50 balance between the 2 sides of your body. But here's the thing, and this is proven again and again with force plate testing, meaning you put someone on a force plate, you have them do the lift, you can really clearly see which side of their body they're pressing down. And you'll notice this in the gym. You see someone doing a barbell deadlift, their hips will wink to one side, usually it's the dominant side, and then that side leads the lift. Well, so why is that a bad thing? Over time, bilateral training leads to an increase in the asymmetries of the body. And there's also a phenomenon known as gross muscular hypertrophy. And what that is the less coordinated side of the body balances by becoming more muscular, hence gross muscular hypertrophy. It's an adaptive quality of the body. And so when you employ unilateral training, which is working one side of the body at a time, and you have to think of this with upper and lower body, right? So you can have a hybridized unilateral bilateral. Say you're doing a split stance barbell deadlift. For the upper body, it's bilateral. For the lower body, it's unilateral. So these hybridized systems, and you can know, say you're doing square stance barbell deadlift, first rep, you feel more the right hamstring, right? So a way to then employ that left hamstring is you could start by priming the left hamstring by putting the left leg forward, right leg back, do 3 to 4 deadlifts, and then do a bilateral deadlift. So you have your hybridized unilateral bilateral deadlift, and then you follow it up with a bilateral deadlift. Now you're going to get more muscle recruitment through the left hamstring, and perhaps you're going to get closer to even muscle recruitment in both hamstrings.
All right, that's a lot more than I would understand unilateral and bilateral, because I kind of end up going back to asymmetric and symmetric when I think about things. So we're going to continue talking about that. So I guess my question for you is when you, I guess, why would you do a unilateral or lateral for balance? So like, how do you balance out? When you people say, "Oh, I have this muscular imbalance." You said you prep that during doing a split leg deadlift, or you focus on one side and the other. Is there more to that than I guess I'm thinking about, or?
Well, okay, so you can determine muscle imbalances multiple ways, which is another reason to employ unilateral training. You can do a unilateral strength test, right? So, an example of that is single leg press to determine which leg is actually stronger in one movement. Then, when you have an idea of that and you're like, okay, I'm going to try to bring balance to that system, you then can spend more time unilaterally strengthening the weak side. And there's something called the 2/3, 1/3 rule, and that is to do 2/3 of the volume on the weak side and 1/3 of the volume on the strong side in order to bring balance. Or just over time, you can use bilateral training with just unilateral training on that weak side, where you're either priming the weak side or complementing your lifting with the weak side.
Okay, and something just came to me actually. So let's just say I am a high jumper, professionally or not. Is you're traditionally jumping off of one side all the time? That's your practice. I know sometimes you jump off the other. Is that the same thing? That 1/3 principle versus the 2/3 principle, or is it something different? I guess like would you still, or would you just dominantly want to keep pushing on that leg that you jump off of?
And so, great question. You're going to say with a high jumper, you're going to want to work that jumping leg, that leading off leg, for your power and for specific sports performance. However, you want to work also the weak leg for two reasons. One is that anytime you're practicing a sport and you're leading from one side, that will always create an imbalance somewhere in the body. For example, with golfers who traditionally swing like a right-handed golfer from right to left, the force of the swing ends up on the left hip. So the left hip over time becomes tight and weak. The right inner thigh becomes stronger. The left inner thigh becomes weaker. And now you have to practice with a cable swinging from, say, left to right to bring balance through the midsection, bring balance torsionally. Also to balance the tension in the hips and in the lower back.
Okay, so I'm a little bit familiar with this golfer's hip you're talking about. That's kind of the general diagnosis what you're talking about, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the injury prevention, what you're talking about is just basically re-strengthening, as we've talked about the whole time, the muscles around the opposing muscles that you've been swinging with this entire time.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay, so that'll help me at least understand a lot more, and I hope it did with you. And what we're going to move into next is when you are going to be using these things, not just for your golfer's hip or for tennis elbow or some other injury. So when would you use this sports performance for, let's like you said, tennis elbow, which you can get for more than just playing tennis, obviously. You can do this,
right.
If you're a textile worker or blacksmith, anything that you're repetitive, that repetitive motion, even, a framer gets that. I have gotten that before in mine. So what is when would you do that sports performance, injury prevention, or figure out those mechanical imbalances?
Exactly. So for example, with the tennis elbow, right? It comes, and it's mainly the extensor of the middle finger that causes the issues there. So you keep working that arm in extension. So in order to balance the tennis elbow and the one arm, you need to strengthen the flexors of that hand. Well, do you really need to do the same work on the left side? And the answer is yes and or no, depending on the need. Meaning, if you don't have the same need to bring balance into that left arm, or if the left arm already is balanced, you don't necessarily need to train it as you would your dominant arm for that sport. Therefore, unilateral, say, wrist curls to balance the extensor forces produced by your tennis swing will help with the tennis elbow. And you can kind of take that idea and apply it to many different sports. So one of the things that happens in repetitive use sports, anything, is mechanical imbalances start to show themselves in other areas of your life, right? So no matter what sport you're training for, life occurs and you live your life off the field. You train for performance on the field, but life happens off the field. So you want the most functional body that you can have that fulfills your other needs for your body when you're not doing your sport.
Okay, so so I'm clear, which part for when you are fixing the flexion part is the unilateral or bilateral? Was that something I missed?
Yeah, exactly. So you've got two hands,
Mm-hmm.
and say you have tennis elbow in your right arm.
Okay.
It means that though doing wrist curls on the left side of your arm will bring balance to your arms, it won't bring balance to the right arm specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, only working the right arm will fix the issue in tennis elbow will fix the issue at the right arm.
Okay.
Right. So meaning like there's no amount of wrist curls I can do on the left side to fix the issues that are occurring on the right side.
Gotcha.
So it's not a strength imbalance between the two, it's an imbalance between the flexors and extensors of the right arm.
Okay. That's probably one of the few times that you actually have a what's it called, when you are doing a isolation as being an okay movement, because I know when we talk about functionality a lot, especially when we train our clients, that's probably a very specific time for isolation. So probably some injury prevention stuff is an isolation movement. So because I know we tend to avoid that on a daily basis.
Right.
Okay.
Well, and you can work the flexors of the forearm, say with a tennis racket or with weights in a full body sport loaded motion. An example of that would be like a scoop shot, which is not something that you hit very often in tennis. It's more infrequent than frequent, but you can use that action here to then work the flexors and then help negate the load on the extensors, like say in the backswing.
Gotcha. Okay. And for those of us who are now, quarantining and everything like that, we have a big issue here. Where do we do this? What is the space consideration? So what equipment would you use for training these things, injury prevention, etc.?
That's a great question. So in my practice, a lot of times I have people either build, buy, or I help them create home gyms. I never put barbells in the home gyms. Why? They're a waste of space, and I really just don't use them enough in my training to warrant spending the money or having the space. So you can fit more people in a small area using dumbbells and kettlebells and sandbags than you can with barbells. It just requires overall less space. The other consideration here is, what if you're working out on the road, or you're working out and your family's around, your friends are around, or whatever, or you want to take your strength training equipment to the field? It's much easier to lug around dumbbells, medicine balls, sandbags than it is barbells and plates. It's just it's a transport consideration.
Makes
so
sense.
You got to kind of be smart on that and think, how many different ways can I use a piece of equipment so that I'm not overspending, overbuying, overstoring, things that I'm just not going to use.
Okay, that makes sense. You said though a waste of space earlier. Is even that so when you get to a professional level and you max output of power or explosive power, is a barbell still going to be, let's say they're on the road for something, they need that max output for power lifters or football players, whatever, would you still, I guess, change what you said?
Yeah, absolutely. If lifting barbells is your sport, meaning you're an Olympic weightlifter or a power lifter, for sure use barbells. But if those aren't your sports, and I would even kind of wager, and I might get a lot of flack for this, that those aren't really sports, that they're training exercises, but you may agree or disagree, and you can throw your comments down below. You don't really need to use barbells, bottom line.
Okay.
There are other ways to train the body that are more efficient and give you a better return on your investment for time spent. However, if you're someone like a bodybuilder who's trying to gain mass and you're using progressive overload with barbells to gain mass, That's another thing altogether. You're still going to need unilateral training to bring balance to the body. So I'm going to give you a good example. So we'll go back to the deadlift, right? Barbell deadlift, most of the time people will lift with their dominant side. So I'm going to go back to the right-handed individual lifting more quickly from the right side of their body than the left side of the body. So they get done their set of barbell deadlifts. Now you have this situation where the right side of their back is hypertonic, meaning the extensors of the low back on the right side are harder and more pumped than the extensors on the left side. So then how do you then bring balance to the body between sets? And you can do it with unilateral training. So you can do this with unilateral dumbbell rows, working one side of the body at a time, starting with your weaker side. So start with the left side, say, and then do the right side second. One of my personal favorites is to do a hand-to-hand kettlebell swing, which as far as the hips are concerned, mimic the performance of walking. And after the hand-to-hand kettlebell swing, say you do, 225 barbell deadlifts, 12 reps. Then you grab a 24 kg kettlebell and you do 30 alternate hand swings, 15 per side of the body. Well, when you're done those kettlebell swings and you set that kettlebell down, now the basal tone of the erectors is similar to more similar to each other because you did that unilateral work than it was when you just stopped barbell deadlifting. So here's the thing too that happens, and just think about this, take this in consideration. I'm telling forth, but I'm also telling my listeners out here.
I'm learning as you guys are.
That if you just racked out set after set of barbell deadlifts where set number one, the right side of the low back is slightly hypertonic. Set two, you increase the weight and you lift again. The right side of the back even becomes more hypertonic.
Okay.
Right? So the next day, you might actually think that you tweaked your back deadlifting, which you might have in a minor way, but what you've just done is increase the asymmetry that is already there. So over time, that decreases the longevity that you have doing whatever that sport is, because at some point you will tweak your back unless you correct those muscle imbalances with unilateral training. And
as you go, obviously.
As you go. And this is a topic for another video, but you must also decompress the spine. So we'll address that in another video. And we'll go into longevity, decompression and longevity, and then how to injury prevention as you train in any sport.
I love decompression in general. Oh man, I do it at the end of my day, and it's super easy to do as you work out as well. But I think it's something you guys should be doing daily, specifically with each workout you do. And like he said, we will go way more into that on a different day. I think we've done well with our who, what, when, where, and why. Is there anything else you want to add about specific sport, asymmetric versus symmetric? How do you compare that to imbalances? I know we started with that, but anything else to end off with?
Yeah, just as a thought kind of experiment, as you apply this to your training, or you think about it and try to figure out how you apply it to your training. Firstly, know your goals. Secondly, work to feel good, meaning if you're just using barbells to train and you're just training bilaterally, because of the asymmetries in your body, at the end of your workouts, you won't feel good. This is why CrossFitters burn out so readily. Their volume is too high. They don't really take form into consideration. Therefore, their form breaks down and they become fatigued. And so over time, their weakest link breaks, right? And then they have to quit training. Ideally, if you're addressing strength and mechanical imbalances as you go by employing unilateral training at the right time, you're going to have more longevity in your sport. You're going to have more longevity in your training, and depending on what your sport is or what your fitness goals are, you're going to be able to keep moving forward, to keep making progress. And that's one of those things that, just keep in consideration is, I want to work out for my whole life. Therefore, my workouts have to be smart. There's a bodybuilder right now who's got this moniker, got this book out. His name's Greg Doucette, and his book is Train Harder Than the Last Time, which is just stupid. It's stupid. Why? Because if you have muscle imbalances and you're trying to train harder than the last time, guess what you're going to do?
Get hurt.
Injure yourself.
Become more imbalanced.
Become more imbalanced. So
I like
the
Greg
truth
Doucette.
is, I like Greg Doucette. I love Greg Doucette. But Greg, you want to train smarter than the last time, not harder than the last time. So people, train smarter than the last time. Please employ unilateral training. Let's say 2/3 of the time, bilateral training about 1/3 of the time, and be smart.
Yeah. Hope you guys learned a lot today.
Love yourself.
Love unilateral training.
Mm-hmm.
Love training in general.
Exactly.
Love being shoulder strong.
Exactly.
If you guys have any questions about a specific sport, being injured, anything like that, first ask your doctor, of course. Then ask some questions below, and maybe if we don't know, we'll look it up. Or we'll reference you to someone else who does.
Exactly. And though we're not your doctors, we do play one on YouTube.
All right, everybody. Shoulder strong over and out. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day.